Hello and welcome to part 2 of designing a launch system for getting a 42-ton payload into orbit. In the last episode we ran out of fuel before the rocket made orbit, so this time I'm going to add more fuel by taking 2 of the boosters and replacing the skipper engines with mainsail engines, and then adding another 2 large gray fuel tanks. This will provide a considerable amount of extra fuel, and the 2 large gray fuel tanks give us just under what the mainsail can lift according to my 20 kilonewtons per ton guideline that I'm trying to use for this rocket. Now, in retrospect, I've realized there were a couple alternatives to just going to mainsails for some of my liquid fuel boosters. For example, I could have added more liquid fuel boosters outside the existing ring of liquid fuel boosters. I could have even kept the asparagus staging with that, having fuel feed in from the outer ring to the inner ring. And another alternative would have been to add the additional liquid fuel to a set of boosters like I've got here, but instead of going with the mainsail engines, I could have gone with a skipper engine and then used solid rocket boosters in order to carry the extra fuel until enough has burned down that I'm back to my 20 kilonewtons of thrust per ton of rocket mass. I didn't think of any of those alternative ideas when I was actually designing the rocket, so let's find out how this thing flies with main signals. Ready for launch. Ready to navigate and outload. And lift off. So far so good. Moving in the correct direction. So this is nothing wrong. Now you might notice one of my liquid fuel engines is burning fuel faster than any of the others. That is not a good sign. The engines are all linked into pairs, so that means that something must have broken somewhere. So this is fumbling around for the hotkey to give me a nice status flight report. And yes, there was a structural failure between two of my fuel tanks. This is not going to end well. Okay, so is there any way to recover from that? Nope. That's missing engine. That's also off spinning. Okay, so this will be back to the drawing board, or at least back to some struts to those engines, so this doesn't happen again. I wonder if I can land this thing away from the buildings and not crash on the launch pad. So I'll just steer it by thrusting up every time. Now looking at this, I realize I could have ditched that mainsail since it's out of fuel and actually balance on the rockets with this, but oh well, this thing was not going down in one piece, no matter what I did. But I did manage to miss the launch pad, so that's good. That's the end of that rocket. Okay. Back to the assembly building for some modifications. Okay, so now that everybody's seen why I like skipper engines more than I like the mainsails, it's time to add some reinforcement to these outside stacks. I'm going to do it in a very similar way to how I reinforced the main central stack. Specifically, I'll use some cubic octagonal girder segments in order to add struts parallel to the stack. And I'm also going to basically put them around that canard that I've got there, because I don't really want to move that. It was put in place with symmetry with all the other ones, so if I move one of them, I have to put all 6 back on. And having 2 girder segments, well, that's going to add twice the reinforcement to this section, which I quite possibly need. Okay, let's get this thing into orbit. I'm playing this at 4 times speed because that's not very interesting. It's the other things that have happened so far. The rocket is going up quite nicely. The extra fuel is lasting quite a while. So almost at 8 kilometers there. And from here it should be fairly straightforward. Gravity turn, getting up to altitude. As soon as we hit 80 kilometers, burning, wait to reach the 80 kilometer altitude, start burning towards the horizon in order to reach orbit. Okay, everything looking good so far. Still have plenty of fuel. I'm sort of keeping my eye on the G-force meter while I do this because that'll tell me when the engine's cut. Yep, just like that. Once again, my second-rate piloting skills get us into a rather elliptical orbit. So I will have to fix that. There's just some adjustments, burning prograde or retrograde to raise or lower the opposite side of your orbit. Just getting that down there. Still have plenty of fuel left. And this looks good. It looks like this design is the one that works. Now, I would like a little more fuel left, so I'm actually going to add a couple small 4.5-ton tanks to it. But this should be good. There is one final thing to do here, however, and that is to decouple the launch system with the payload and deorbit the launch vehicle, because I would prefer not to have my low Kerbin orbit cluttered with random debris. But even with just this tiny amount of fuel left, this little remains of the launch stage doesn't weigh very much, and it should deorbit quite easily. Now, as I said, I am going to add a couple more 4.5-ton fuel tanks to this system because my second-rate piloting skills mean I need a little more of a safety margin than would perhaps be needed by somebody who can actually fly this properly and get into a roughly circular orbit on the first time instead of having to do a lot of adjustments, but such is life. Now, in my next video, I'm planning to use my 42-ton launch system to launch another ship into orbit. This time, it's going to be an exploration vehicle capable of exploring the Kerbin system, powered by nuclear engines. And so I will see you all next time.